Good afternoon, everybody. Well, welcome to all of you, as ever. When I was chatting to Gill this morning and we were preparing this, she told me that this is the 36th anniversary of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. And that's really the reason why we're having this call today. Obviously, Chernobyl is in Ukraine. And that disaster, which was a nuclear meltdown, basically, which contaminated a huge area around the nuclear plant, contaminating it for years to come, basically, and obviously having a profound effect on those people, both initially and in the much longer term. And the effects are still being played out. And of course, where that is very poignant is where there's any kind of impact, long-term impact on the children that are born to people who were either there at the time or subsequently. So I just need to tell you a little bit about this charity, which is the Chernobyl Children's Lifeline charity, which was set up 30 years ago. And it's UK-wide, but it has links to specific places. And Joan, who is on the call, but is not going to be doing the talking with me, I just will mention to the audience that Joan very sadly lost her husband quite recently. So she asked Gill if she would stand in for this particular session. But Joan set up the link, which was in St Ives 25 years ago. So she's been very involved with it for a long time. But Gill is the secretary of the local group and has been for the last 12 years. Now, I'm going to pass over to Gill now because I'd like her to give us a lot more background to this charity, what it is, what it's done in the past. Just tell us everything that there is to tell us about it, please, Gill.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thanks again, Tricia, for this. It's absolutely amazing. Well, yes, I've been involved with the charity for 12 years, and it's been the most wonderful thing to be involved with. Every year when we could, obviously COVID we couldn't, but every year up until then and a long time before that, we brought over as many children as we could from the area affected by the Chernobyl disaster. And the Chernobyl is in the north of Ukraine, about 60 miles from Kiev. But the wind blew the contamination northwards and over the border into Belarus as well. So we have had children from both Belarus and Ukraine over the years, and we bring across as many as we can, but that depends on hosts to take them. So my husband and I are a host, and we take 2 children. Each host takes 2 children, and we've always had boys, not for any particular reason. So we've had groups of, say, an average of 12 per visit, and we have to fund that all through donations, fundraising, etc. We have to fund their visas, we have to fund their travel and their flights. We have to get them down from Heathrow down all the way down to St Ives, and they stay for a month. And so each host family looks after those children and feeds them. We buy clothes for them, and they have an absolute wonderful time when they're with us. I mean, St Ives is a wonderful place anyway. So we've got the beaches, hopefully a bit of sunshine depending on when they come. So normally it's May, June. We have done it in October, but they love to swim, they love to surf, they love to go to all of the attractions around. We often touch up our colleagues around the area to give us some reduced entry fees, that sort of thing. But it's just playing games, having fun, eating good food, nutrition, nutrients, vitamins, and all of that helps them to raise their immune system and fight off the effects of any remaining radiation in their areas, of which there is a lot. In many areas, they don't even measure it. So we don't even know, but we do know that there is a very large number of cancer incidents with young children, and there was something like 200,000 cases of thyroid in people that were under 18 at the time of the disaster. So there have been some measures put in place, but they come across, and the fact that they spend the time with us, they lose any radiation in their bodies, and it can help to lengthen their lifespan, because, as I say, it raises their immune system and gives them a much fresher area to live in for a month. It can be quite challenging because the age of them is between 9 and 11. So they're quite young when they come over, and they don't speak very much English, if any at all. And we certainly don't speak very much Russian or Belarusian or Ukraine, which is all very similar. Sign language is incredibly useful, as it is with all young children. And of recent years, we've used Google Translate, which is much fun as well, because it doesn't always get things right. They start very, very shy, and they don't say a dicky bird on the first 12 hours. And then by the end of the visit, they're cheeky, they're happy, they put on weight, they've grown in confidence, and they just have an absolute well of a time. So it's as much for us as it is for them, because we get such a lot out of it. So, of course, in the last 2 years with COVID, we've not been able to have children, but we've still raised money and used it to send in the main medical supplies, COVID supplies, over the last couple of years to affected areas. Our charity focuses on this northern area around the Chernobyl area, and it includes Borodyanka, which you may have heard the name of on the news, and Korston. And these are areas within an hour's drive from Chernobyl, about 2 hours from Kyiv, I believe. And this area we're a small charity, so we can only work on a limited area. But even then, it's about double the size of Devon, so it's a large area. And I spoke to our CEO yesterday, and sadly, that area hasn't had a great deal of focus by the Red Cross and the UNHCR. So whatever we can do is really, really important. So the last 2 years, we've taken in supplies for COVID, as I say. And of course, since the war, we've taken advice from our partners on the ground. What do they actually need? Because you, again, may have heard of awful stories of clothes that people have collected and taken to the border, and it's all gone to landfill because nobody can transport it and people can't carry it if they're refugees. So we need to take in items that they need. So it is food, but it's also hygiene products, it's water, it's all sorts of things, medical supplies, diabetic supplies for people with diabetes, supplies for children who have palliative care. So we're transporting disabled children, we're transporting sick children and their families across to the border to get them to Poland and safety, and on the return journey taking in goods and supplies to the area. So we know a lot of the children in that area because we have had them and they've gone back and grown up. A great deal of them will be, if they're boys, fighting age at the moment. We've only heard from, I think, 36 children that we've had of recent years. We've only heard from 5 of them and been told they've got to safety. And of course, communications are down, so it's quite difficult. So Borodyanka and Korston, they're the key focuses for us, and that's our hub, Korston, which is to the west of Kyiv. And in Borodyanka, there's a maternity hospital that has no running water, and trying to continue to operate in a maternity hospital with no running water. And then there's no running water in large parts of that town. So the worry is dysentery or typhoid, because the sewers are not too bad, but there's no water to flush, etc., and to drink. So that's really, really difficult. They need nappies, they need high protein baby food, firewood, cleaning materials. We actually had a delivery going recently, last Saturday, I think it was, and it was going to be taking a lot of diapers, nappies. But on finding out what we did about the water supplies, we had to change that and instead take bleach and cleaning materials and hand sanitizer, because we had to work out what the priority is in that circumstance.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Gill, and for giving us such a wonderful introduction, really, to what's going on and all the things that you're currently involved in. I would love to bring Joan in at this point. Joan, I know you have been there in the time that you've been working with the charity. Are you okay to take yourself off mute?
Yes, I'm off. Yes.
So you've been involved for 25 years, I know, and I'd love to hear from you what I actually do know a Ukrainian citizen. Her name's Helen, and she looked after my grandson Patrick when she first came over as a student. She's the most delightful person on the planet. She's just lovely. She's still here. She's got her own child now, and she's here legally. Initially, she wasn't here particularly legally, but she is now. So I do know, one Ukrainian person, and as I said, she's very beautiful as well as being a very nice and lovely person. She's still, she's still involved with our family, let's put it that way. But you tell us your impression of Belarus and Ukraine and the people and the children.
Delightful people who will just give you the last penny and their shirt off their back if you were in need. Extremely generous, extremely hospitable, very caring, very, very family orientated. And I think some of that probably dates back to old Soviet times, where they didn't have many friends outside of their family network because trust was an issue. So very, very family orientated. So I can understand why so many of the refugees that are coming don't want to leave the area. They really want to stay as close as possible to Ukraine, to their husbands that are fighting and their grandmothers that are stuck because they're elderly and infirm. Really, I can say, Gill, I think you would agree that the Ukrainian children and the Belarusian children are just the same. There really is no difference between them. And it's very, very sad that there is now this division between Belarus and Ukraine because of their political system. I had a call the night the war started from a boy that I've hosted from Belarus, from Moscow, and he's now 37, and he's married to a Russian girl, and they're expecting their first child, and they just the day before taken out a huge loan on a flat in Moscow, and then of course sanctions hit. But he was absolutely distraught because he has many, many friends and relatives in Ukraine, and he saw no difference between himself, a Belarusian boy, and a Ukrainian citizen. And it was beside himself that he might be called up to fight. I've heard no more from him since, and I don't want to compromise him by having his phone listened to or anything. But it just illustrates the fact that really these people, the Belarusians, and the Ukrainians are all the same, really. And there have been some interesting instances of the Belarusians sabotaging the railway network from Belarus into Ukraine that was being used to transport arms and things for the Russians. So there's been all sorts of things going on quietly in the background, whereas I think a lot of people tend to think that Belarus has sided with Russia, when in fact the people have not. It's utterly heartbreaking, really. We had a leader that contacted us. We wanted to find out if she was safe. She was a school teacher who had been with two groups of children that we'd had, and she was in Borodianka in a flat in the basement, for 4 days whilst this town was bombed, and she hid there. And then finally on the 5th day, she managed to make contact with her son, and she said she ran dodging tanks, taking her passport and documents, and that was all, to her son, who had enough fuel to get her to the border and to get her out. But she had to leave behind another son who was fighting, and an elderly babushka grandmother in Kyiv who was not able to move. So really heartbreaking stories. You can't imagine. And in places like Mariupol, where they're in the basement and have been there for 2 months and haven't seen daylight, these children, 300 children, it's just beyond belief, really, absolutely beyond belief. So I can understand their incredible patriotism, their incredible spirit and their fighting spirit, their sense of survival, that they're going to defend their homeland to the end, because they are extremely patriotic. I've got pictures of them singing their national anthem when we've had a sports day for the children, with their yellow and blue bands on, sports bands on. And the same with the Belarusian children. They would sing the national anthem and be very, very proud of their nation. And it's something that we always say to them when they're going home, because people say to us, how can you send them back? But really, we start on about week 3, preparing them for going home, back to mum, back to see their school friends. What are we going to take back for your school teacher? And what are you going to tell them? And we keep a scrapbook and build up their own country, and not make them feel that this country is better than theirs, but that they've just come for a great holiday. Because I think generally, Gill, they don't know why they're here. They don't really understand the health issues that they've had. But it is utterly heartbreaking, the situation, just unbelievable. We know some children have stayed in Borodianka hiding, and they're still there. And goodness knows what these children have witnessed. I just can't imagine.
Yeah, the whole thing is, words almost fail me. I mean, I think everybody on this call will be in agreement about the horror that we feel around it, and just the utter senselessness of the whole thing, really around one man and what he is trying to achieve at the expense of an entire nation, a proud nation too. We watched, as part of our film club, the film, and I do recommend it to anybody on this call who would like to understand more about how Ukrainians feel about their country. It's called Winter of Fire. Is it called Winter of Fire?
Yes.
And it's what happened in 2014, which was when the Russians first invaded Crimea. But they also, the Ukrainians rose up and chucked out their president, who was Kremlin controlled and very corrupt. And they battled for, I think, something like 100 days. It was called the Maidan Square Rebellion. And the film is wonderful, because you absolutely see how passionate these people are about Ukraine, about their country, about not wanting to be ruled from Russia, about having their distinct identity, their distinct language, and their distinct desire for self-determination. And everything that Putin is doing. When they announced the invasion, I watched that film and I just thought, he doesn't know what he's up against, because you can absolutely see in the resistance that they've put up why and how they have managed to resist in the way that they have. And anyway, we're all praying and hoping, I'm sure everybody in this call will agree, that we're all praying and hoping for an end which is both speedy but also satisfactory for the Ukrainian people, because the worst kind of end would be if they were then subjugated in some way to Putin and the Kremlin. So thank you for that, and thank you for the insights that you've got, your personal insights. I think they're incredibly important to know and to understand. Perhaps I could come back to you again, Gill. We're talking, aren't we, for this charity that you're running? We're talking about orphanages and hospitals. Basically, that's where the focus of the support is going. Am I right?
Well, it is going where it's needed, and that includes hospitals, baby hospitals and orphanages, transporting orphans and people that need disabled. There's a lot of disabled children in orphanages as well. And if they need transport, we've now got a minibus that will be able, been converted to transport people horizontally or if they have a disability. And what we're looking for is some more transport. Yes. But there is a lot of orphanages in Ukraine and Belarus, but we're talking about Ukraine today. And the reason is that if families are in poverty, or sometimes if they have a disabled child, they will ask the orphanage to take them, give them to the orphanage. I don't think there's a lot of government funding. There is some for orphanages, but there's a lot more than there is, and we don't have, as you said earlier today, we don't have them in this country anymore, do we? Really, in the sense that they are over in Ukraine. So they need supplies, food, medicine, as I said, palliative care for some of the children.
Yeah, just about that. I mean, orphanages are a strange concept for us because they don't really exist in this country anymore, because most people of adults, young adults who have children don't die. Whereas once, before they may have died and therefore the children needed to be looked after. So you sort of wonder, well, where are all these children coming from that have to be in orphanages? So we're talking about, and I think it's very important what Gill just said there. I mean, I got a mentally and physically disabled. She's not physically so disabled now as she was as a baby, but she's mentally disabled granddaughter. And obviously, the state provision for her care, she is educated in a special needs school. We've had the most phenomenal level of support, state level support for her from the moment that she was born. I mean, quite incredible. I reckon that after her first year of birth, she was probably somewhere in the tune of £100,000 had been spent on her care. That's at a conservative estimate. I'm talking about medical support. I'm talking about the support of everybody that was involved with her. And they were, so many people I can't begin to explain. So you imagine a poor country, a country that doesn't have the kind of resources that we have, it doesn't have the kind of social systems in place that we have. And you're born into a family, you're mentally or physically disabled, you are going to demand a huge amount from that family. And, as I said, culturally, it is much more acceptable there in that place to put those children into a special home where I think they probably think they're going to be better looked after. I don't think we need to judge that. I think we could judge it, but we can't judge it because we don't live their lives, and we have to understand it. But it's very important to say that the children that are needing this support are often those children who are the least robust, the least able to cope with this kind of dislocation and upset, and the most in need of the kind of things that you're talking about. And then, of course, you've got within the hospital system, you've got those children who've got cancer, and they've got cancer because of where they live and the kind of effects that they've had from radiation. So I think all of those things are important to say, because you could say, well, why are there so many children in hospital and why are there so many children in these orphanages? Well, because of where they live and the circumstances of their lives. I think we've had a huge amount of insight from that. Thank you very much indeed. Is there anything else you want to add? Because I think we will go down into smaller groups and have a little bit of a chat, come back together. If there are any questions that you want to ask Gill or Joan, please do ask those questions. But before we do that, is there anything you want to add, Gill? Anything that you haven't said that you'd like to say?
Only that you're absolutely right in what you said, and that our charity does focus on the children. That's why it is set up, because we know adults were affected by Chernobyl, but it's something that this charity wanted to do, and was to bring children across and give them that respite and that difference, make a difference to their lives. So now we can't bring them across. We're trying to continue making that difference in their home country. So it is about the children, but of course we do include families. We wouldn't move a child to Poland without their family. So it's children and their families, but it is very much focused about the children and caring for them. Yeah,
thank you. Joan, would you like to add anything?
No, I absolutely agree with everything Gill said. Thank you. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much to both of you. That was very illuminating. And one of the reasons that I wanted to have this conversation, I met Joan and Gill when I went down to Cornwall and had a Super Troopers lunch, which was absolutely delightful and delicious and so lovely to meet everybody down there. And I was very conscious of the connection that at that point I knew it was Joan that had that connection with Ukraine. And I very, very much wanted to do something for Super Troopers to be able to do something. And so we've launched this charity appeal. I asked Gill to set up a separate Just Giving page so that we could actually measure the success of our appeal. And when I looked at it just before I came on the call, we were up to £889, which is absolutely brilliant. So it's a brilliant start. And we're going to let it run for another month. And I'm hoping, I realise that many people will have already contributed to other charities. And I totally acknowledge that. So, you know, absolutely no pressure. Understand if you have already contributed. But I think this is such a worthy cause, and it's very personal. And because, you know, you're both Super Troopers and we're all in this together, and I felt very strongly that I would love to do something quite specific for that terrible situation that's in Ukraine. I think about these people in these underground shelters every night when I get into bed. I do every single night since the war started. I think about those people. I think how lucky I am to be putting my head on my pillow in my comfortable bed in my safe house. And I feel so desperately sorry for those people. And they're incredibly brave, and I do hope to goodness that it won't go on too much longer. Let's just see if there are any questions that anybody wants to ask. Anybody does have a question you'd like to ask Gill or Joan, just put your hand up. Okay, so Dorothy.
I mean, just going back to the original work of the charity, really, I just wondered what was the criteria for selection for those children to get here? It must have been incredibly difficult to. I know it's going off the theme a little bit.
No, that's fine. No, we work with local partners, so we work with people on the ground. So it could be head teachers, social workers, and the charity has contacts with those people, and they will recommend children.
Oh, right.
Need. So it could be poverty, it could be illness, it could be we've had children who one parent has murdered the other and is in prison. We've had children who oh gosh, you know, yeah, sorry, it made me think then. We've had all sorts of children who are living with their grandparents in shacks. We've had children come across, they normally come across with no luggage really. They might have a bag and they might have a pair of old trainers and a few jumpers and a pair of jeans, and they've all been folded, they've all been laundered and folded, they're third hand, but they've all been laundered so well because their parents want to make a good impression. And we've had some children, I remember one girl who came with absolutely nothing. And you know, we saw her when we went back to Belarus, and she'd grown into a very wonderful teenager, confident, and had been fostered into a really lovely family. So we do try and keep in touch with them and see how they get on. And when we did go over, what they take back with them is albums of photographs. We take loads of physical photographs because they don't have computers or phones, or so they take books of hundreds of photographs back with them of their visit. And Joan has been more times than I have, but they will always get them out, and they're so proud of them, and they will show them and they're their treasured possessions of the time they've had with us. But I will say that the vast majority of children that come over, it's a justifiable decision, and I know how on earth.
But it must be so incredibly difficult. It must be such a difficult decision.
It's so much choice, isn't it? And how do you choose? But those that have come across have had either a poor social background, poverty, or illnesses or past illnesses, and they need that respite. They need that change to their environment, really. So yeah, thank you.
Pauline, you want to ask a question? Take yourself off mute.
I just wondered if they're hoping to restart the sessions for the children to come back over when this situation is improved.
Absolutely, definitely. And we were talking about that in our group, and the fact that as soon as we are able, we will try. And of course, we also said in our group that although there's an immediate need, this is going to be an ongoing need for years because of the devastation and the trauma to the children and the family and everyone else that's living there. So yes, we hope as soon as we possibly can and we get permission to, we will bring children across in the same way that we have done before, and that will give them respite from the tragedy of the war as well as Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question, please?
Please do.
Somebody in our group said, is it only people in St Ives that have these children? And I thought that my friend had some children over living in Hertfordshire. Is it the same organisation, or is it a different organisation?
It's very much likely to be the same organisation. Joan might know how many there are, how many links.
At the moment, there's about 60 links in the country, and we have hosted about 60,000 children since the charity started. So all over the country. There used to be many more. There were 150 about 10 years ago. But I think as hosts and people who were originally involved started to get older, people have dropped off. But about 60 active links still, from St Ives in the south. There used to be one in the Channel Islands, all the way up to Nairn in the north of Scotland. So, and Northern Ireland as well. So yes, all over the country.
Any other questions? No? Oh, Charmaine.
Yeah, just very quickly, have I got it off me? I just wanted to know that you said that when they come over for a month that they can get rid of the radiation. Is that correct?
Joan, you carry on.
Yes, it is. At one time, we had, and don't ask me how it worked, but we had a medical chair, diagnostic chair at Minsk Airport in Belarus. And before the children left to come here, the levels of radiation in their body were measured, and then they were measured again when they returned. And then there was a mobile unit that used to go around to schools, and they were measured again 6 months later, and then after a year. And we could plot, you could see the level when they left, what it was when they returned, and it was always considerably less. And then the gradual increase again when they were obviously being drip fed background radiation again and contaminated food. But it was really quite dramatic. And I think, you know, the point is that by reducing the level of radiation and increasing their immunity, if they're going to be one of the unlucky ones to develop a cancer, then they will have more chance of fighting it.
Right, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, any other questions? No. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for those questions too. They were very helpful. And well, this has been an incredible session, really, very moving and very enlightening. I think we're all quite sad about the situation that's happening, but in our own small way, we can do what we can do. And well done, and thank you to Gill and to Joan for all the things that you are able to do. I'm just going to mention our fundraiser again. What would be wonderful, we will put this video of this session onto the Super Troopers page. Could you comment underneath about it, about you know, how you found it, sort of recommend that people watch the video, because I'd like this to have a wider audience, not least because it will then spread the word about the fundraiser. We've had a very low level of response on Super Troopers to this. I think people see Ukraine, they see and they go, oh, it's not that they're not interested. I think there's a certain amount of I don't know what the word is, you know, it's been going on for some time, and I don't think people can keep the level of engagement because it's it's painful.
Mm.
So if you could help that way, that would be absolutely wonderful. So recommend the video, say how much you enjoyed the talk, or found the talk illuminating, you know, anything and everything you can do really to promote it, because the more that we can get engagement with this on Super Troopers, then the more money that we're likely to raise. And we're doing a pretty good job already, but it would be lovely if we could get it up some more, because every single pound that's raised is obviously going to make a considerable difference, so that's very, very important. So thank you to all of you for coming this afternoon. Really appreciate your time and company, and a massive thank you to Gill, and obviously to Joan as well. And thank you, Joan, for coming. I know you were in two minds whether you would this afternoon, but we're delighted to see you, and you're often in my thoughts, and I hope that all goes well with you in the coming weeks and months. So thank you, everybody, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.